all who take on the role of father. Bunny Rose Entertainment will be honoring you on your special day, June 20, 2021 at 6 p.m. We bring you our annual Father's Day show, an enchanting evening of music. Entertaining you will be jazz pianist Dr. Kathy Brown, clarinetist and saxophonist Andreen Brown, vocalists Elan Neal, Kalia Brown, and Kathleen Newman. Our MC will be the incomparable Faye Ellington. Sponsored by ISA Printing Solutions, the best platform for your branding solutions. Quick Ship Jamaica and Quick Ship Florida, the stress-free way to shop online. City View Hotel, where the only thing we overlook is the city. Broadcasting on Irie Times TV, Caribbean TV, Reimagined, and PBCJ, the People's Station. Also, join us on Facebook and YouTube at Bunny Rose.
Thank you for listening to see another day and for being here about the nation's business. Dear Heavenly Father, I pray, Lord God, that you bless the members of this committee, bless the work that we're going to be doing. Let us think clearly as it relates to where we want our country or nation or people to move as it relates to the Cybercrimes Act. Dear Heavenly Father, I call for your guidance and just to help us keep focused respectfully about the nation's business. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.
Thank you very much, member. Terry Long, apologies for absence. Ms. Brandon, any apologies or anybody notify of being late?
Member Morgana had said to me, might be absent.
Might, okay. All right. We note that. Anybody else? All right, so members, we are here again today to have two presentations from the Financial Services Commission and the Jamaica Bankers Association. So we're looking forward to the two presentations today, which will leave us how many outstanding presentations, Ms. Brandon?
Well, it will leave us two additional presentations from Simtai Consulting Limited and the University of Technology. The University of the West Indies is supposed to make a submission by Friday of this week, and the Ministry of Education is to resubmit.
Okay, so that will be possibly 4 then?
It will be possibly 4, Chairman.
Okay, all right. When we get to this date for next meeting, we'll discuss the dates and the thing. So before we have the presentation, I would just basically make an appeal to those persons who are watching and reporting on the happenings of this committee that they report accurately and fulsomely. There was an unfortunate tweet that was sent out that basically misrepresented some of my comments in relation to the last presentation by the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. And you know, the truth of the matter is ironic because exactly what we are trying to achieve in coming out of this cybercrime committee with new legislation and of course fines, etc., increasing of fines and widening the net. And it is quite ironic that some people, for political or whatever other purposes they're trying, their agenda is continue to misquote and misrepresent people on social media specifically. So I'd ask for some level of responsibility, despite the fact that people have agendas, because I find it very distasteful that a committee such as this that is trying its utmost best to strengthen and put some teeth in the laws as it relates to cybercrime can still be carrying out those kind of actions in the height of a joint select committee. So for the members, when you are making your commentary or your comments, I would say that just be very clear and have full clarity so that you don't expose yourself to the mischief, as I call it, that I saw coming out of the last meeting by persons who should know much better and do much better as former representatives in Parliament and also a lawyer by profession. So with those few words, I would ask for the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on June 3rd. The minutes have been very accurate to this point. And I think that these minutes reflect the same. So I don't know if any member has any corrections of the minutes or any comments in relation to the minutes of June 3rd. And if not, I would ask somebody to move and second for the minutes of June 3rd.
I so move, Chair.
Senator Gill, Member Gill, thank you very much. Seconded by?
Seconded, Mr. Chairman. Senator Campbell Rodriguez here.
Campbell Rodriguez, thank you very much. Matters arising from the minutes. Is there any matters arising from the minutes that anyone would like to raise? Well, that just goes to show the accuracy of the minutes. So we will now move straight into the presentations. And I would ask the Financial Services Commissioner, I think Mr. Everton McFarlane is leading that. He can introduce his team and he can present. Welcome and welcome to the Bankers Association, and thanks for making your contributions to this important matter. Over to you, Mr. McFarlane.
Thank you, Minister. Good morning, all. Good morning to the members of the committee. Good morning to my colleagues from the FSC who is joining me, as well as my other partners, my other colleagues and stakeholders in the financial community who may also be a part of this meeting. Chair, I just turned on my video briefly for a minute so you can see that it is in fact Everton McFarlane speaking to you, that there is no cyber fraud going on here. But if you'll indulge me, I will turn it off while I'm speaking, just to facilitate, just to ensure that the connection remains as stable as possible. I'm joined this morning by my Deputy Executive Director, Mrs. Nicolette Hennes, by my Senior Director of Information Technology, Mrs. Donna Harilal, and by my Senior Legal Analyst, Mr. Mark Morgan. During the question and answer, depending on the nature of the questions, I may direct to you, Chair, that one or more of my colleagues be asked to respond. But for the most part, what I'll do, I'll just very quickly go through some brief comments we had on specific sections of the Act. And for ease of reference, what I'll do, I will just give a listing of the various sections to which I'll be referring, so that members can turn to relevant sections. Briefly lay out the comments and then just leave the stage open for question and answer. So I'm about to start my video, Chair, and now proceed with regards to comments. I would first of all just like to start with two general comments. They're not in specific reference to any particular section. The first being that it would be useful if the Act, and by the Act here I am referring to the Cybercrimes Act, make references to a broader range of other legislation that might be affected by cybercrimes, and for this legislation to be referenced directly in the Act. Given that much criminal activity now takes place virtually, So for example, and this example may repeat itself in terms of other comments. For example, money laundering may include the transfer of funds from criminal activity using online banking, and so having these references would allow for the act to have greater reach, and might be we suggest might be a simpler way to update the effect of some legislation without having to do a mass of different amendments. So that's just a kind of an approach that we thought might be useful. The second general comment is that we noticed that there was no reference to extradition of our nationals if overseas authorities trace illegal activities to Jamaican nationals. Is that something that may be necessary, or is that covered elsewhere? With regards to specific comments, Chair, I would speak specifically to sections 3.1, sections 4.1, sections 5.2, section 6, section 8, and section 9. And I'll move in order. And I will move in order of the sections. With regard to section 3, we believe the offense referenced there should be modified to refer to the offense being a person who knowingly obtains or causes to be obtained for himself or for another person any unauthorized access to any program or data held in a computer. Let me rephrase that. A person who knowingly obtains or causes to be obtained for himself or another person any unauthorized access to any program or data held in a computer commits an offense. Essentially, we believe that a person who intends to obtain unauthorized access may use various means in getting an intermediary, either through coercion, persuasion, or perhaps deception, other means to execute the act on their behalf, intending, and by doing so, their intent is to escape identification. So a modification of the act to make an offense of using the agency of another person, we also believe would be useful. With regards to section 4.1, we are suggesting that the offense be modified to include also a person who commits to include that a person commits an offense if that person accesses or causes to be accessed. Again, referring to the undertaking of criminal activity through not necessarily directly, but through agents. With regards to section 5.2, and in particular, looking at subsection 1, we believe a third caveat may be considered by the committee to indicate that it is immaterial whether the alteration or modification that is criminalized is intended to yield or in fact yields a public benefit. Right? I'll repeat that. With regards to section 5.2 and the issue of intent, for the purposes of subsection 1, we are suggesting a third caveat may be considered to indicate that it is immaterial whether the alteration or modification is intended to yield or in fact yields a public benefit. Moving on to section 6 and the issue of unauthorized interception. In reading this, we are the view, Chair, that the provision here is overly broad, and in particular, we are thinking that network operators oftentimes deploy various network monitoring solutions that might intercept traffic on their own network in order to, understand threats to the network or be able to intercept threats. And that this monitoring activity might lead to the capture of information such as customer passwords, keys, and other data, if such data are not encrypted. And so the question we would ask is it intent? I don't think it is the intention of this section to deem such activity illegal. And so the question we ask is, does the current wording do so inadvertently? Does there need to be a narrowing of the scope of that provision in section 6? Moving on to section 8, and this is the penultimate comment from us, Chair. Section 8. It's in relation to the issue of computer-related fraud or forgery, and we believe that this offense that is referenced in that section should be widened to include the sending, receiving, or sharing of data obtained from a computer or other electronic device unlawfully with the intent or reckless of the intent to cause harm, damage, or loss to the aggrieved party and or procure an advantage to himself. Essentially, the expansion that we are suggesting in this way would allow, we believe, for the offense to better contemplate certain kinds of financial crimes and money laundering crimes, which do not only include the unlawful obtaining of the data, but also sharing that data or information to other parties with nefarious intent or an intent to unlawfully deprive or gain from another. So, we are putting that recommendation on the table. And finally, Chair, with regards to section 9, and in particular subsection 9.1, the issue of establishing the true identity of an email sender. And we support the view that the Act should consider a mechanism, either in the Act or regulations, to verify the true identity of an email sender, given the prevalence of email spoofing, which would involve a person forging the email address of someone else or of multiple persons. So, Chair, with those few comments, and we had provided copies of these comments, and I had asked that these comments also be resent as of today also, just for the avoidance of any confusion or doubt. With those few comments, Chair, I yield.
Thank you very much, Everton. I'm not sure before the members raise any questions or clarifications. I'm not sure if the ministry or any of the supporting team wants to make any commentary on some of the points that were raised by the FSC. All right, members.
Chair.
Floor is open to you.
Chair, I just want to see clarity on what Mr. McFarlane represented in 5.2 in relation to the intent. For the purpose of subsection 1, a third caveat may be considered to indicate that it is immaterial whether the alteration or modification is intended to yield or in fact yield a public intent. Is he suggesting that caveat should be 5.2C in addition to what is represented in 5.2B?
Chair, through you, And good morning, Mr. Gale. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, sir. I noticed you're sporting a beard.
Yes, I'm following in your footsteps. Anyway, all right. Yes, to answer your question, yes, it would be an additional caveat. I'm not a drafter.
Recording stopped.
It would seem to follow that it would add another bullet item to what's already there. And perhaps, okay. Mark, I may ask my senior legal technician to
no, I understand. I understand now. When I look back at it, I understand. I just want it to be clear. Thanks, Chair.
Well, Chair, notwithstanding through you, in the preliminary discussions yesterday, we also thought that maybe
recording in progress.
If we did an exercise, we would also come up with other caveats apart from the public good caveat. And so in doing so, the question was posed also, should consideration just be given to this provision being strict liability as opposed to, and therefore dispensing with the need to outline different circumstances where it would still apply?
Noted. Is there any members, other members with any?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Right,
Senator Campbell Rodriguez here. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to be certain before I give my comments that the document we received marked JBA feedback on the bill. That's the Bankers Association. Because JBA can be many different entities.
Senator, JBA would not be the FSC. I can tell you that.
Oh, so this is okay. Oh, no. I wasn't clear who. I came in a little late, so I wasn't clear who was presenting. So it's not you. Okay.
No, it's not.
Nice. Okay.
All right.
Mr. Chair, from my part, just to indicate that I thought it was a good presentation. So thanks to Everton and Mr. McFarlane and his team. I have no further comments on this presentation.
By virtue of the few questions and clarifications, it seems as if presentation is short but very precise. So if there's no other member that would like to raise anything, then I would thank Mr. McFarlane and the FSC for that short but important input, and we move on to the next. So is there anybody else?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, may I ask my team if they are interested, could still stay for the rest, because I think there are some interesting points to come, but I may have to excuse myself at a particular point. So you will see me exiting the meeting, Chair, with your permission.
No problem, Mr. McFarlane, no problem. All right, so I take it that there's no other inputs from the members. So then we will move on to the Bankers Association and ask them to make their presentation.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee, and good morning, other stakeholders and persons present. I am Miguel Williams. I am legal counsel at National Commercial Bank Jamaica Limited, but I'm also a member of the Public Policy and Legislative Committee of the Jamaica Bar Association. We would have provided a written submission, and the JBA there is referring to the Jamaica Bankers Association, sorry. So in relation to our comments, in preparation, we would have looked back at the submissions that were submitted, and I would have also reviewed the submissions made on June 3rd before this committee by the Ministry of National Security and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So the focus today, I'll be really advancing submissions in relation to 3 sections, Section 10, Section 17, and Section 19, and proceeding in that order. In terms of generally, Section 10, I'll be outlining an unintended gap in the legislation. And then for Section 17 and 19, we are asking for some timelines to be introduced to encourage efficiency. So I go now to Section 10. Section 10 deals with unlawfully making available devices or data for commission of an offense. And the offenses related to that section are the offenses outlined in Section 3 to 9. To meet that criteria in that section, one of the requirements is for the computer, key, or data or device to be designed or adapted primarily for the purpose of committing an offense under any of Sections 3 to 9. The issue that I'm raising is in relation to the wording designed or adapted primarily. For instance, you may have a situation where an individual legitimately has a key, and that person passes the key to someone else, and that so discloses or possesses that key, and that other person is unauthorized. When you look at it, that key in and of itself was not designed or adapted primarily for the purpose of committing an offense, but the person would have access to it. So we're recommending changes, and there are 2 options in terms of dealing with this change. One option is to amend it to delete the section, or the words rather, designed or adapted primarily, or the other approach would be to introduce a new offense. And in this regard, I'll be referring to the submission made by the Ministry of National Security when they address Section 11. Section 11 deals with protected devices and can relate to devices that store things like defense for the country, or it also deals with banks and financial institutions. The recommendation that was made was for the disclosure of a key from that protected computer to be an offense in and of itself. The Ministry of National Security was actually taking issue with the section where it refers to committing an offense under any of the sections 3 to 9. So what that would be achieved is that if somebody has access to a key that relates to banking and financial institution, the mere disclosure to someone else that is authorized would automatically create an offense, and that would essentially plug the gap that we have identified. So I'm moving to the Section 17, and as I indicated earlier, these are more introducing time limits to encourage efficiency. Section 17 deals with preservation notices, and it's an investigative tool for police officers where they suspect that information is in the possession of someone, and they want that information preserved so that they can properly and comprehensively complete their investigations. And in particular, I'm going to Section 17(2)(b), and that indicates that initially that notice is served, when served, is valid for a period not exceeding 60 days. So there's an initial time limit because it's, I would submit, it's understood that it's an investigative tool, and so the step would be to move forward in terms of advancing the investigation. So there is 60-day time limit originally. Thereafter, going to subsection 4 of that same section, that timeline may be extended by a parish court judge. And it's within the discretion of the judge to extend it without notice, and that application can be made without notice to any other parties. What I'm asking the committee to take into consideration is that when data is being preserved, there are additional measures that have to be taken, and there are also additional costs associated with preserving the data. So based on the section now, since there's an initial period of 60 days, you would really appreciate that urgency is important. So we're submitting that there should be an outer limit in terms of the extension of time that the parish court can draft. Because the process is preserve the information, and then I will submit, eventually go into our production order under section 21. So the information can actually be seen by the officers and move forward. So in that regard, for example, the outer limit could be 6 months to a year. So it doesn't, I don't want to seek to overly burden or overly restrict the parish court judge. So that's why the submission is 6 months to a year in that regard. So now I move to section 19, and that deals with seizure of material. So in that section, I'm going to section 19.1 and also referring to A. One of the obligation is that the person who executed the warrant shall, during the execution or as soon as possible thereafter, make a list of what has been seized or rendered inaccessible. Again, it shows the urgency in terms of starting with during execution or as soon as possible thereafter. We are also suggesting that an outer limit be set there. I understand that it may be difficult, so it was initially framed widely rather. So because some investigations can be complex and the data that's gathered may be long. But in terms of depriving persons or companies, banks, financial institutions of the particular things, they should have at least have a list very quickly so that it can be reconciled. So the submission will be as soon as possible thereafter and within, for example, 1 week, so that the list can be provided urgently. Similarly, in section 19.2, the person who has had material seized from them can request a copy. And in terms of the obligation to provide those copies, the obligation is as soon as it's reasonably practicable rather, in terms of complying with that request. Again, as indicated earlier, we're suggesting an outer limit that may take longer. So that could be, for example, a period of a month, because in certain circumstances, it may be complicated in terms of copying the data. So in that regard, those are my submissions on behalf of the Jamaica Bankers Association. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Again, another short but precise presentation. Again, I don't know if the ministry team or any of the agencies supporting government departments want to mention anything in relation to this presentation, and then we go to the membership. Mr. Member Witter? Member Witter, you want to say something? All right, the floor is open to members for any questions or clarifications.
All right, morning again, Mr. Chair. Council, thank you for your presentation. I must say I'm in agreement with the deleting the words designed or adopted primarily, simply because of the mischief it creates in and of itself when dealing with a device that was, well, as Council explained. Did you lose my connection just now, or?
Yeah, we lost you a bit, member. Start over again.
Sorry, I was indicating that I quite like Council's presentation, and I'm particularly in agreement with deleting the words designed or adapted primarily as it relates to devices that might be improperly used, simply because, as he indicated, when seeking off, let's say, for example, a key that was properly designed for a specific function, but it then falls into the wrong hands, and then it is misused to create the crime, etc. So by deleting the words, we completely cure that. We completely cure any mischief or any misunderstanding, or we prevent any judge from saying, but it was created for this purpose. It was nothing properly created or designed for the crime itself. So I thought it was a very, very good suggestion.
Thank you very much, member. Is there any other members that have any questions, comments, input on the Bankers Association presentation?
Chair, I took note that the Bankers Association would have had glance at the Ministry of National Security's presentation, because Mr. Williams made reference to it. And one of the deductions coming out of that presentation was the underreporting of cybercrimes. And I had raised the concern the last time we met around the financial institutions reporting those incidents or what would have been under investigation. And I picked up where there may have been a challenge from financial institutions in reporting these incidents. I would like to get some sort of a feedback from Mr. Williams, if he's permitted to do so, to understand what are these challenges, if they are, and the perspectives from the JBA in this regard.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Gill. There are some restrictions in terms of when fraud matters are reported. When there is a violation on an account, it's still confidential to the particular customer. So in terms of disclosing information to the customer, what's really needed is that the customer actually makes the complaint so that it can be pursued by the police officers and the relevant financial institutions cooperate. So how I would say it is, the role of the customer is paramount in pursuing the investigations, and that may result in some difficulty in terms of the underreporting, whether our customers wish to pursue it or not.
All right, can I ask a follow-up? So you're saying the only way the matter can get to the stage of a criminal investigation is if the customer reports it, even though you would have the information on who you might consider to be the perpetrator and all the other details, you couldn't report it at all.
So, Mr. Chair, through you, Member Robinson. So let me clarify. I'm not saying that there is no situation where the bank or other financial institutions can't report a fraud. So I'm not saying that. I'm saying that integral in the process is the role of the customer, especially dealing with the type of the more prevalent frauds. So the customer's role is very important, integral and paramount. That's the argument I'm being made.
The challenge you have is that in many of the scenarios, the financial institution makes recompense to the customer. So the customer, quite frankly, haven't got back his or her money, doesn't feel the need to go through a detailed process of giving a statement, etc. So, I mean, I had a case of my card being skimmed, and when I reported it, I was refunded immediately, and that was the end of the matter. And quite frankly, the bank said it was very prevalent and a lot of people affected by it. But, you know, in those circumstances, then you're going to get very little reported.
And so the challenges would be whether or not the real intent of catching the perpetrators would be an objective. Because it's all good and well when there's a built-in system to compensate the customers. But then you have the perpetrators out there that continue to demonstrate this kind of illegal activity. And you may have information on them because your system and device may have captured the known perpetrators, whether by visually or any other means. And so could it be that there's a incorporated system with the consent of the customer that these matters are reported? Do you see that as a possibility in terms of an approach?
Yes, Senator Gill, that is an approach that can be explored. Yes. I can't speak definitively to it now, but it is something that could be explored, whether through this act or potentially the Banking Services Act.
But the first port of entry would be an acceptance by the JBA in terms of embarking on such an approach. In other words, you would have to agree that there's a willingness on the part of the JBA to take on this initiative.
So in that regard, I wouldn't have the authority at this point to do that, but I can speak to them on it in terms of addressing that issue. I can take that back.
No, I know you wouldn't have the authority, but what I would want you to be a good messenger and take back the concern, because it is a concern that is being raised not only by even employees in the banking system, right? Who would have had to participate in these internal investigations and to be exposed to these challenges.
Thank you very much. I understand.
Right.
I'll be a good messenger.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, member with a welcome.
Yes, welcome. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just to support the point made by Senator Gay, I think the Bankers Association could look at the scenario where they now become after paying back the customer for whatever they would have been fleeced. The bankers now become the victim because they would have had to absorb that cost. And therefore, I think they could look at finding ways to make the report, given the fact that they now become the victim and not the customer.
Frank, I think the issue is whether they actually are the victims or not. Because I think those costs tend to be covered either through insurance or some other means. So it almost becomes a cost of doing business, which ultimately the consumers pay. So
I understand, but I think they could look at it from that perspective.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Williams, thank you for that presentation. Section 19, in the document you submitted, there was reference to section 19.1, where a recommendation was made for 2 days, instead of saying as soon as possible to say 2 days. Why 2 days? And is that even practical for the police to have done their due diligence within 2 days?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, Senator Campbell Rodriguez. In relation to that question, that's not a question of due diligence. It's making a list of the items seized. So they would have already seized it, all the items, and I would submit in terms of good order, the list should be generated shortly after. However, in doing the oral presentation, I did not focus on the 2 days. I do understand that the 2 days may be restrictive, and that's why I altered it to 7 days.
Okay,
and I think that would be reasonable in the circumstances.
How long is it now? How long does it take now in general? Do you know?
No, I don't have the data in terms of operationally, how long it normally takes. So what I was trying to do is we're trying to do is more be proactive. So we're not saying that there's any abuse being carried on operationally, but as I indicated before, to encourage efficiency.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, so any other questions or comments in relation to the Bankers Association presentation? Both presentations were short but precise and very useful. Natalie, you want to say something?
No, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other member? We haven't heard from the ministry or anybody else. I don't know if they have anything I want to
Well,
say.
Mr. Chairman, there was something that has been at the back of my mind and I chose not to raise it, but I will take the opportunity since you're asking, if you don't mind. There is a lot of emphasis on, from section 3, there's a lot of emphasis on reckless. I noticed that the Bankers Association has mentioned that we should include where it says the offense is only committed if a person knowingly obtains unauthorized access to a computer. And the suggestion is that this offense should include where a person's actions are reckless. Now, in general, and where a person ought to have foreseen or ought to know, just for our understanding when we're deliberating, why specifically do you want an emphasis on recklessness?
My apologies for not making it clear, Senator Campbell Rodriguez. So in doing the preparation, I would have indicated that I watched the presentation from the Ministry of National Security, but in relation to this point, more importantly, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. So when it was prepared, that was a submission, but we are departing from that now. We haven't seen it, the issue there is a matter of mens rea or criminal intent. We haven't seen where the Director of Public Prosecution raised any issue in terms of the current criminal intent. And we would want to, since it's an act that has been operational for several years, we would not want to differ in that regard on that point. We don't feel that strongly on that point. So in terms of submitting, in terms of reckless or ought to know, we're abandoning those points. Sorry for the lack of clarity before.
Okay, so just to ensure I understand, we are not to consider that anymore as something being presented from the Bankers Association.
Yes, in terms of recklessly, including additional criminal intent in terms of recklessly.
Okay, thank you. And just another question. On the last page, you have a general comment. And that interests me because quite often it is said that the general public doesn't know and understand the laws enough, etc. But from what I understand here, you are saying that you'd like the Parliament to consider the following for possible inclusion in a related set of regulations or guidance to the enforcing authorities. Can you give us a little bit more to consider here, a little bit of information? Why do you think this needs to be firmed up a little bit more? So there must be a reason it is included in this presentation.
Yes, agreed, and I thank you for that. So in terms of that aspect, it's in relation to those continued education. The Cybercrimes Act is one of the legislation that is reviewed more consistently than others. So there will be constant changes, and as a result of the changes, there has to be consistent and effective education on an ongoing basis so that it can effectively be implemented. And with cybercrime as well, it is a complicated area because there's constantly advances in technology. So it's ensuring that all the parties involved are kept abreast. So that's really the focus of that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Rodriguez. At least you were able to get your two clarifications. So you have nothing at the back of your brain now. You're fine.
It's empty right now.
Members, anybody else would like to have an input in relation to the Bankers Association? This is the last call. I think, as I said before, the two presentations were short, brief, and precise. Not much to argue about. So if no one has any other comments, we'll move to any other business.
Chairman, if I may, this Senator Longmore, I've been, as I indicated before, I'm in and out of the meeting, so I will review what was presented and maybe just revert to it at our next meeting. But I kind of, my attention was admittedly a bit divided. I'm sorry about that.
No problem. No problem. Senator Longmore. All right, under any other business, we have dates for the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead.
Before we go to the dates, I want to just raise an issue. Last meeting, the DPP spoke about a recommendation where we could look for certain situations where it is a judge only versus a jury. We had a discussion on that issue. I can't remember the exact section where that was being discussed, where that was a recommendation. But I raise it to see if, you know, maybe the attorneys amongst us, I'm not sure if the Solicitor General is on or anyone from our office, but given the comments from the Chief Justice this week, you know, of course, it has led to a lot of conversation in the general public, but how does it affect what we discussed last week and what was presented to us from the DPP? As a non-attorney myself, I'm most curious as to, you know, where do we go with that recommendation? As I said last meeting, I wanted to be convinced. So I'm not sure if the Solicitor General's office is on and could probably provide us with some guidance within that context, or any other attorney.
Sorry, I got cut off. Got cut off a brief second.
I think that the Solicitor General is on.
Yes, good morning,
SG.
Chair. Good morning, Senator.
Morning, SG.
Colleagues. We would need to have some time to consider the matter, and there are more than just legal considerations at play. So I We'll not be able to give you a response today, Senator, but we will provide a response at an appropriate time after discussion with the Attorney General.
Okay, thank you. So can we flag it as something that we definitely need to come back to? I'm not sure if the clerk, we can flag this as an issue that we need to be brought up once again so that we can have a fulsome discussion on it.
Well, from our part, and there is also another officer in this committee from the chambers, Mr. Foreman. So either of us will also raise it, but yes, I mean the clerk will also flag it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, SG. All right. Anything under any other business before we go to the new dates? All right. So the proposed dates that I have gotten from Parliament, Wednesday, July 7th at 2 p.m., Wednesday, July 14th at 2 p.m. We're winding down to the summer break of Parliament, which I suspect will be probably between the week of the 20th of July. And therefore, these probably will be the last 2 dates that we can do before the recess, which we will not come back to Parliament until September. So the dates are tight because everybody is trying to fit in as much before the break as possible. So if the members have no issues, I'd like to book these 2 dates for...
Did you say both dates are at 2 p.m., Chair?
Yes, Senator Gill. Both dates are at 2 p.m. based on the current Parliament schedule. Can we have a concurrence in relation to those 2 dates so we can get 2 more? Hopefully, possibly those 2 dates would take care of the presentations, and therefore, when we come back in September, we'll be in a position to now start doing the actual review.
Can you repeat the dates again, Mr. Chairman?
Wednesday, 7th of July at 2 p.m. and Wednesday, 14th of July at 2 p.m.
Both dates work for me, Chairman, and 2 p.m. works definitely better. Thank you.
Both are fine, Chairman.
Member Samuda, you're forgiven for being late.
Apologies, Chairman.
Okay, no problem. All right, so we can go with those dates.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Chair.
All right. Thank you very much. So again, we were just 1 minute under our 59 minutes with 2 good presentations. So it shows that it's not the length of time, but the quality of the presentations. So Ms. Brandon, you will schedule for those 2 dates and try and fit in so we can get, hopefully we can conclude with the presentations during those 2 dates.
Will do, Chairman.
All right, so members, thank you very much. Thank you very much again to the FSC and the Jamaica Bankers Association for the presentation and for the members and the supporting staff. So we will meet again on the 7th of July at 2 p.m. Until such time, stay safe and God bless you.
All right, blessings to everyone.
Thank you, Chair. Keep safe, everyone.
As the Heart NSTA Trust repurposes itself to respond to the demands of the global services sector, this partnership with the Amber Group will allow for the expansion of training in the emerging area of coding. This in our continued effort to develop human capital in the emerging skills that are on the horizon.
We've actually decided to embark on this partnership because Jamaica as a country is well placed. We're English speaking, we're just south of North America, and we have such talent in terms of our youth, in terms of our personnel. So Amber, the Heart and Hope have agreed to partner to develop the capacity, to develop the capability of our technological resources, of our intellectual resources, by training our youth to be able to code, to write programs and things like that.
I inquired about it and they said that yes, I could join. So I signed up and I joined. Then I did some research and recognized that in the population of coders, there was at least around 2% were women, black women. And I saw that as an opportunity to make a mark in not only in Jamaica, but regionally.
Coding and programming share the same language. So I got more interested because of programming, because a couple of years ago I did wanted to do programming at VTDI.
A major area in high school for me was IT and EDPM. I did that for 2 years, and from then I realized that there was a drive for more of technology. So I decided to take this step.
I'm looking for a successful career in being a software developer, a software engineer, and I want to create softwares or apps for myself. So I want to gather a team with my colleagues to execute the visions that I have or even visions that they have as well.
I would like to learn how to operate computer on a different level. Not only about the basic knowledge that is taught in school, but to a higher level. To be able to help others and to create programs to help both young and old and middle age as well to make Jamaica better.
I want to make a game because who doesn't like games now? So I want to make, I'm not going to say difficult, but it's going to be kind of difficult. So that's why I need a very good team, and I want to make a learning application for kids 3-year-olds and above.
This partnership with the Amber Group, which is a Jamaican-based company with international reach, is one that will allow the Heart and Estate Trust to expand its training portfolio into the technology of coding, an area that the organization has not gone into. And as the organization seeks to expand its training into the emerging technologies, we can be assured that through this partnership, our graduates will be trained to international standard, making them marketable not only in Jamaica, but across the world.